You are listening to Julia's Trucking Cafe News Hour. And welcome to Julia's Trucking Cafe Trucking News Hour. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy that you're here and that you want to listen to the trucking news. As always, I have lots of news to get to, so let's get right to it. Our first article is out of Idaho, and police out there shout out at a trucker for donating thousands of cans of soup. This happened in the middle of October. Police recently coordinated with a truck driver to ensure that pallets of soup made it into the hands of an Idaho charity group. The Boise Police Department recently shared the story of Don, the truck driver, who went out of his way to see that thousands of cans of soup did not go to waste. It wasn't just any other night in the city of Boise last night. This is what they wrote. Among the calls for service was a truck driver needing a little help. He didn't break down or need to report a crime, but had what turned out to be a donation. There had been a mix-up, and at 1 a.m. he found himself with an extra pallet and a half of soup on his truck. The business he was delivering to couldn't take it, and he needed it unloaded so he could pick up his next load. Boise police were happy to direct him to our friends over at Boise Rescue Mission Ministries, River of Life, where officers and residents worked together to unload what turned out to be 2,160 cans of soup. Thank you for thinking of our community, Don. It's always nice to see good people doing good things for others. We're just sorry the pictures ended up so blurry. That was very nice of him. He had to, they didn't have no way to do it. I would have grabbed a chain and to the patrol car and put the patrol car in reverse and drug them pallets back to the back of the trailer instead of having to hand unload them, flats of cans of soup. But I often do that quite often. A couple of years ago, I had 9 extra boxes of hams from a shipper, and I donated them to the waitresses over at a truck stop over in Virginia, and of course they just loved me to pieces, and it made everybody's Christmas. I also saved a few to myself and gave them to family members as a Christmas present. So everybody had ham that year for Christmas. And in our next story, 100 drivers were laid off as a Texas company shutters their trucking division. A Texas logistics company says that they're closing their trucking division in order to focus on rail transportation. So here we go. Dallas, Texas-based Trinity Logistics Group will be permanently closing the company. And according to FMCSA Safer website, Trinity Logistics employs 102 drivers and operates 150 power units. Trinity Logistics Group is a subsidiary of Trinity Industries, which provided transportation, construction, and industrial products and services. Jack Todd, Vice President, Public Affairs, Trinity Industries, provided a statement on the company's decision to shutter their trucking business. As a result of the company's shift from a multi-industry company to a rail operating company, Trinity Industries Transportation and Logistics needs have changed significantly. To align our U.S. transportation and logistics strategy with our business strategy, Trinity has made the decision to transition our logistics need to third-party carriers. Trinity would like to thank all of the Trinity Logistic Group drivers, mechanics, and logistics professionals for their hard work and dedication to delivering products timely and safely to our Trinity businesses and customers over the years. In other words, they're a flatbed division. They went rail because it's probably cheaper, and then they went to brokering out their loads to brokers and to other flatbed companies. Todd also said that the laid-off workers were provided with compensation as they transitioned to other jobs. Employees impacted by this strategic decision were provided with competitive job transition compensation and benefits. Yeah, like a week's pay. But anyway, I hate to hear that stuff like that happens. And in this sad story. A family petitions for more lights and no dark colors on rigs following a fatal crash. What? A new petition is asking transportation officials to require several changes to commercial motor vehicles to make them more visible at night in hopes of saving lives. Really? Why don't we slow the F down? The Change.org petition was created by Kathy Foreman and is addressed in the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration State Transportation Departments. It's addressed to, The petition describes in Burleson County, Texas, the left Foreman's sister, Leslie Rosenberg, 62, and niece Sophie, 19, dead. I'm sorry to hear that about Ms. Leslie. A tanker truck pulled onto the unlit highway from a side road, crossing 3 lanes of traffic. My sister, driving in the rightmost lane in a minivan, plowed into the underside of the tanker. There were no skid marks. The reason for there being no skid marks is simple. My sister never saw the tanker. She never saw the tanker because it was painted dark blue and had no lights on the sides that were clean and clearly visible. It was the highway version of a stealth vehicle, Foreman writes. Foreman goes on to argue that if the tanker had been painted silver and had lights illuminating the entire outline of the tanker, the crash could have been avoided. I don't think so, not if she was talking to her 19-year-old daughter and they were arguing about something. You can't always say that. The petition asks transportation officials to require the following 3 changes for tankers and tractor trailers. Have lights down the entire sides of the vehicle so that drivers could see the presence and length of these vehicles at night. You need to slow the F down, are not painted in dark colors, have regular inspections on the presence of working side lights, and clean retroreflective tape. These could be part of the weigh station process while vehicle registration, etc. Oh yeah, just pile on some more work, Ms. Foreman. Petition also points to 2 statistics that relate to fatal truck crashes and nighttime driving. Petition currently has more than 6,800 signatures of all they're her little friends. So there's another person, Change.org, that's fighting against us drivers for more regulations. We're not regulated enough. I feel like writing her an email. I'll think about it. Anyway, back to the news. A driver's feedback needed on truck parking along I-10 corridor. Or I should say driver's feedback is needed. They didn't put the headline in there very well. Sorry about that. A group of state transportation officials are turning to truck drivers for input on parking along a busy truck corridor. The I-10 Corridor Coalition, that's a mouthful, is currently seeking drivers to fill out a survey on semi-truck parking on I-10 in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. There's not a lot. Dispatchers and other members of the trucking industry are also invited to participate. Information gathered from the survey will be used in the development of the I-10 truck parking availability system. The goal of the TPAS project is to provide truckers with parking information that will cut down on parking in unauthorized or unsafe areas. When TPAS is up and running, it will reportedly be able to detect where truck parking is available at locations along the I-10 corridor and provide truckers and dispatchers with that information in real time. They have that quite a bit in Kansas and I think Nebraska right now. The hope is that the system will cut down on the amount of time and fuel spent looking for parking, as well as the risk that drivers will park in inappropriate locations or continue to drive while fatigued. The coalition says that all information provided by survey respondents will remain confidential and protected. Sorry, I got a little bit sinus stuff going on, so I apologize if I sound a little stuffy on this episode. And up next, a truck driver facing extradition to the U.S. is following an alleged sexual assault of a minor. And I'm talking an underage person, not a minor out west. A former truck driver jailed in Canada been committed to extradition to the U.S. for an alleged sexual assault of a 16-year-old girl. 64-year-old Baines is currently in custody in British Columbia and for an alleged sexual assault in June of 2000 in Fairmont, Minnesota. According to the local news, Baines met the 16-year-old girl at a McDonald's where she was waiting for a friend. At the time, Baines gave himself the name Paul Baines and offered to buy the girl something to eat. He then took her back to his truck, where the two viewed a pornographic movie in the cab, which made her uncomfortable, according to her testimony. The girl then says she wanted to leave, but Baines began to kiss her and touch her inappropriately. While he was touching her, the victim told Baines to stop and that she wanted to leave, but Baines held her by her waist and would not let her go. The girl then says that Baines not only let her leave once she gave him her phone number. Baines has since argued that evidence presented in the case did not specify whether the description of events were based on the girl's original testimony to police 20 years ago or based on her current memory as a now 36-year-old woman. However, the judge determined that Baines presented no evidence pointing towards the woman's testimony being manifestly unreliable or defective, and that evidence exists upon which a reasonable jury, properly instructed, could return a verdict of guilty. Baines was taken into custody on the day of the ruling, September 23rd, and he's currently being held in Canada until the Minister of Justice decides whether to surrender him to the U.S., which may happen as early as the end of October. Now, I'm also commenting on the news that happened the middle of October. They're again playing catch up. And in this article, truckers blast freight brokers in the comments to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They were accepting public comment, and truckers have not held back at expressing their opinions. From the 13th to the 19th of October, they were accepting comments on two separate petitions regarding transparency in transactions with freight brokers submitted by the OOIDA, Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, and Small Business and Transportation Coalition, or SBTC. The petitions came after the issue of unscrupulous freight brokers became a major hot-button topic in trucking in the spring of 2020. A group of truckers spent weeks parked on Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. to bring attention to the issue, and they're eventually rewarded for their efforts with a meeting then acting Administrator Jim Mullen and Mark Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff, which Jim Mullen is no longer administrator. He went to, as I reported in the last episode, or episode 102, acting Administrator Jim Mullen went to a company that is now producing electric semis. Isn't that just peachy? Back to the article, the OOIDA petition asks the FMCSA to require that brokers to provide an electronic copy of each transaction record automatically within 48 hours after the service has been completed. The SBTC petition asks the FMCSA amend regulations to prohibit brokers from coercing truckers to waive their right to review the record of the transaction as a condition of doing business. So far, 858 comments have been received. Large percentage of the commenters appear to be members of the site community, which has a large presence in the U.S. trucking industry. So, yeah. I'm not going to read the comments that are in this article. You can find them in the show notes at juliastruckercafe.com under cafe menu and show notes, and it will be episode 104. Now up next, a trucker is shot at a KFC restaurant over a wrong order, says police. Memphis police are on the hunt for a truck driver who they say opened fire at a fast food restaurant earlier in October. This is from a news release from the Memphis Police Department, news release. They are asking for the public's help locating a truck driver wanted on aggravated assault charges. I will spit this out eventually. The charges stem from an October 10th shooting incident at a KFC restaurant located in Winchester, in Memphis. A male driving a gray Freightliner pulled into the drive-thru, placed his order, received it, and pulled off. The male later returned to the business after discovering that his order was wrong. The male pulled back into the KFC parking lot and approached the window, demanding his refund. Once the cashier returned the money for the incorrect order, the man pulled off and fired shots into the business. The bullets shattered glass and penetrated through several walls. Luckily, no employees were injured. Police say that the truck driver fled the scene after the shooting. Investigators described the suspect as a black male, 6 foot, wearing blue shirt, black pants, yellow tennis shoes at the time of the shooting. No arrests have been made, and the shooting is still under investigation. And in this story, troopers say a semi hit a pilot car before crashing off a Kansas overpass. A major crash involving a pilot car sent a semi crashing off of a bridge onto I-70 in Kansas. This happened October 13th, just north of Salina, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. According to Kansas Highway Patrol, a pilot car was stopped on I-135 south of I-70 to allow a truck hauling an oversized load to merge onto northbound US 81. I know that interchange very well. Troopers say that a semi traveling north on I-135 hit the pilot car, then drove out of control across the northbound lanes of I-135 and struck a concrete bridge railing. The semi-truck continued through the bridge railing and vaulted onto the eastbound lanes of I-70, where it came to rest. A pickup was struck by debris falling onto I-70. Both occupants of the pilot car and the driver of the semi that crashed off the bridge were taken to the hospital with minor injuries. Just gotta slow the hell down. Just don't get it. And in this story, a truck driver is transported to a major trauma center after crashing into a tree. Obliterated that truck, too. Truck driver was seriously injured after colliding with a tree in Elba, Alabama, around 5:30 in the morning. He was traveling northbound along Highway 87 when they veered off the roadway and struck a tree. The force of the impact knocked over the tree and partially ejected the driver, trapping the rest of him inside. Firefighters then spent nearly an hour cutting the tree in order to free the driver. Once freed, the driver was transported to a local medical center before eventually being transferred to a major trauma center for further treatment. The reason behind the crash, as well as the driver's current condition, is not known. Yeah, you obliterated the heck out of that truck. And this is sad to hear, but a semi-truck hauling chicken burns to the ground. A semi-truck hauling meat burned to the ground in South Dakota, leaving a slippery mess. The incident occurred around 5 o'clock in the morning, October 14th, in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The local fire department reports that a semi-truck hauling chicken caught fire on Interstate 29 near the T exit, forcing the closure of all but one lane of the highway. Police say that the closure caused another minor wreck and that the roadway was slippery due to the residue from the fire. Yeah, you talk about cackling, Colonel. As first responders worked to put out the flames, there was concern over the fire spreading due to dry and windy conditions. Luckily, the firefighters were able to contain the fire before any further damage was done. No injuries were reported in the incident. And if you listen to my show any length of time, you remember that I reported on Pilot and Flying J executives were accused of duping truck drivers. And they were convicted of it. Will a court overturn those convictions? A Tennessee court has thrown out convictions against high-ranking former Pilot Flying J staffers for a years-long scheme to defraud small business truckers due to a racist secret recording played during the trial. The Sixth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals has overturned the convictions of former Pilot Flying J President Mark Hazelwood, former VP Scott Wambold, and former Regional Account Representative Heather Jones. On February 15, 2018, Hazelwood was found guilty on charges of conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud in connection with an infamous diesel rebate scheme which involved Pilot Flying J employees making false promises to deliver discounted fuel to truckers who they believed were too unsophisticated to notice that they were being conned. Following a 2013 raid at the company headquarters, Pilot Flying J took responsibility for the fraud scheme and paid out $92 million in fines to the federal government, along with $85 million in settlements. Wambold and Jones were also found guilty on charges connected to the scheme. Hazelwood was later sentenced to 150 months in prison. On Wednesday, October 14th, 2 of the 3 judges on the panel sided with Hazelwood's appeal and ruled U.S. District Judge Curtis Collier had erred in allowing prosecutors to play secret recordings of Hazelwood making racist statements captured during a company meeting in Rockwood in October 2012. The use of the audio recordings in this case jumped the rails of federal rules. Even if somehow otherwise admissible, the recordings are a textbook violation because the risk of unfair prejudice eviscerates any purported probative value, the judges wrote in a majority opinion. In the recording, you could hear Hazelwood ask, "Where's our greasy racial slur song?" Court records show that former salesperson Arnie Rallencotter responded to Hazelwood's request by asking, "How is that sensitivity training coming?" While a racist David Allan Coe song plays during the recording, you could reportedly hear Hazelwood and the other Pilot Flying J employees singing along. How is David Allan Coe racist? At the time that Judge Collier allowed the playing of the recording in court in January 2018, he said they were permitted as a response to the defense argument that Hazelwood was too smart to engage in an activity that would have hurt the company that he worked for. Collier at the time explained his decision to allow the jury to hear the recordings. If it became known the president and pilot engaged in vile, despicable, inflammatory racial epithets against African Americans, this could lead to boycotts and protests. How is David Allan Coe a racist? Really, he's a country singer. Get over it. I like David Allan Coe. Anyway. In this story, a bicyclist doctor dies after hit-and-run crash with a semi-truck. Well, yeah. A man has passed after being struck by a semi in Illinois. This happened Tuesday, October 13th, around 10:30 in the evening on Route 150 in Champaign. Illinois State Police say that 3 bicyclists were heading west on Route 150 along the right side of the highway when a tractor-trailer hit 2 of them, leaving Dr. William with great bodily harm. Officers say the rig did not stop, leaving the scene of the crime. The truck was possibly white or silver-colored. We are deeply saddened by the loss of our friend and colleague who died following injuries sustained in an accident Sunday. Why was he riding at 10:30 at night? Riding his bicycle on a U.S. highway of all things? You know, I'm sorry. That makes no sense to me. You know, that's why you're supposed to ride during the day. But it's the trucker's fault. It's always the trucker's fault. And one dead following a Nebraska trooper's pursuit of a stolen semi. One person died in a crash involving a stolen semi in Nebraska. The crash occurred around 11:30 in the morning near Lincoln. Nebraska State Highway Patrol says they received a report about a stolen semi-truck traveling east on Van Dorn Street near Lincoln. A trooper spotted the semi in question and attempted to initiate a traffic stop, but the driver refused to stop and fled at speeds of up to 80 miles an hour on a rural road. As the truck reached the intersection of 184th and Van Dorn Street, police say that it failed to stop at a stop sign and collided with another semi. The trooper called for medical help, but the driver of the stolen truck was pronounced dead at the scene. The driver of the semi that was struck was not hurt. Troopers are asking Lancaster County Sheriff's Office to spearhead this investigation. And a former Ice Road trucker is sentenced for a building explosion. Remember that loudmouth driver on Ice Road Truckers? Arthur Burke? Artie? A driver who formerly appeared on popular trucking reality television series was sentenced this week on arson charges. Arthur Burke, who appeared on History Channel's Ice Road Truckers for 5 seasons, was sentenced on Wednesday to 18 months of house arrest after he pled guilty to a charge of arson by negligence. Burke, a Prince Edward Island resident, will reportedly be allowed to continue to serve the house arrest sentence from the cab of his truck, which will allow him to continue working. Burke was charged following a November 2018 incident during which he caused a major explosion at his apartment in Yellowknife while trying to make shatter, a concentrated cannabis substance made with butane. According to CBC, the explosion caused more than $60,000 in damages and sent Burke to the hospital for nearly 2 weeks. Now that's a new one. Shatter, it's called. Wow. And up next in this story, railway improvements expected to take as many as 10,000 semi-trucks off of Kansas roads. A new railway upgrade program is expected to take as many as 10,000 semi-trucks off the road by streamlining the transportation of grain throughout Kansas. Kansas DOT is part of Governor Kelly's Ike program, which will funnel $5 million towards railway improvements for over the next 3 years. These funds will aid in 13 renovations on 3 short-line railway systems and build 15 miles of new track. Repairs will include increased capacity of bridges, improved elevator siding, and additional tracks, which will allow more grain cars to be filled at once. Quote, it will really benefit rural Kansas and a lot of small communities, some of which don't have rail service to their grain elevators. These repairs could mean quicker payments and fewer truck requirements for farmers, lessening the demand for semi-trucks in rural Kansas, as well as potentially reducing damage to roadways. Rail is one of the most cost-effective ways to get grain from the farmer to the end user, they said. For farmers, instead of having to drive their truck all the way to an elevator a county away, this is centrally located. They could just bring it to the rail stop instead, and getting more trucks off the highway. That's their main goal. And trucking company is finally selected for removal of Shingle Mountain. The city of Dallas has finally accepted a bid for removal of a huge pile of used shingles known as Shingle Mountain. Blue Star Recycling began dumping shingles on land along South Central Expressway in southeast Dallas near the McComas Bluff landfill back in 2018 with the intention of recycling and selling off the material. But the shingles just kept piling up, and the company eventually filed for bankruptcy, leaving a 60-foot high, 70,000-ton pile of shingles to pollute the air. Yeah, whatever. And in this story, troopers issue a warning of $1,100 fine after third truck struck in Smuggler's Notch in 12 days. Vermont State Police are warning truckers to steer clear of winding road famous for entrapping big trucks. Vermont troopers say they were called around 10 in the morning on Thursday, October 15th about a stuck truck on Route 108 in the town of Cambridge, locally known as Smuggler's Notch. This was the third truck to get stuck in Smuggler's Notch in 12 days, police said, prompting them to issue a warning to truckers that they shouldn't even attempt it. It's a hairpin turn. and then they get stuck, and then they can't get around the doggone turn. Now let's take a short break. This episode of Julia's Trucker Cafe is brought to you by My Patriot Supply. As truck drivers, we all know what it's like to be at a shipper's or receiver's and have to wait to be loaded for hours on end. Am I right? Especially produce coolers and paper mills. That's why you need to be prepared with extra food in your truck, especially with the bad weather coming in, like it is over here in Kansas, up in the Dakotas and Minnesota. 90 was shut down, Interstate 94 was shut down, along with 29. What are you going to do if there's no food and a truck stop was without power? That's why you need to stay prepared with My Patriot Supply. Now it's not what you're thinking. My Patriot Supply is delicious emergency food. They have food kits that are good up to 25 years. They come in a slimline tote that you can easily store in your food pantry or under your bunk. I can speak from experience. After living through Hurricane Katrina, we were without power for 10 days, me, my mother, and son, and I. If it weren't for the MREs that were flown into us, we wouldn't have any food. There was 4 60-foot pine trees that broke in half during that storm and crossed my driveway and landlocked me in. That's when My Patriot Supply would have come in handy. If I knew then what I know now about My Patriot Supply, I definitely have some of this food stockpiled in my pantry. Now, for a limited time, you could get a 1-week supply of food in a handy and neat-looking ammo can, like you see here, for just $39. Look at all that food you get. It's a week's worth of breakfast, lunch, and dinners, just for $39. How do you get it? Where do you go, do you ask? Well, I'll tell you. Just go to my website at juliastruckercafe.com, click on the Emergency Food Supply tab, scroll down and click on any of the images to find out more information and get yours today. They even offer gluten-free food for under $100. Winter weather is here. What would you do if the interstate was shut down, just like I was talking about? You need to get My Patriot Supply and get it today. To the news. In this next story, a trucker is seeking help offering reward for return of a lost trucking kitty. Hopefully they found him by the time I report this. Kind of a little late, sorry. Kenneth E. says he's offering a large reward for the return of his cat that went missing in South Dakota. Says that he has had help in the search for the cat, but they haven't had any luck. Begging for help in finding my buddy. Fellow truckers took to the comments to offer condolences and even notified local vets and shelters about the missing animal, in hopes that someone turned him in. The cat goes by Mr. and is said to be very friendly. Kenneth is encouraging anyone who thinks they have information on the cat's whereabouts to contact him. He is a gray tabby cat and with a blue collar, it looks like. So he goes by Mr. And up next, a truck driver fled after an alleged DUI crash. A truck driver has been arrested for an alleged drunk driving incident after fleeing the scene of his crashed rig. This happened Wednesday, October 14th, just after 9 p.m. in California. According to the local news, Rodney Cavan was driving his Freightliner south on I-5 when he lost control of the rig and overturned it, laid it over, blocking both lanes of the highway. He then fled the scene on foot, but was later found by police. He was taken into custody for driving under the influence of alcohol. And the California Highway Patrol is still investigating the incident. That was a brief story. And a truck driver in this story attempts a carjacking after wrecking his rig in a police chase. A truck driver was arrested on multiple charges after driving recklessly, leading officers on a police chase and attempting to steal a car. A series of events happened on Thursday, October 15th in California. The California Highway Patrol states that the chase began near Stockton and continued into Los Banos area, where officers and patrol cars called it off. They then called in Air Patrol that began tracking the runaway semi-truck before it crashed into 3 other vehicles and overturned on southbound I-5. Truck driver then exited his wrecked rig and allegedly attempted to carjack motorists stuck in traffic caused by the incident. However, police soon arrived on the scene and took him into custody after a brief struggle. You're just digging your hole for yourself, dude. He has been since identified as 26-year-old Darius Markey Kennedy from Alabama. He's been booked into the Fresno County Jail and is facing multiple charges, including reckless driving, causing injury, hit and run, resisting arrest, and battery on a peace officer. Yeah, well, you just screwed your CDL, dude, giving the rest of us a really bad frickin' name. OMG. And up next, 2 truck drivers walked away from a serious accident in Michigan. This happened October 15th. According to the local news, a semi-truck was traveling through the intersection of Michigan Highway 53 and another highway when it struck another semi-truck hauling scaffolding. The trucks were seriously damaged in the wreck, but luckily no injuries were sustained. And the roads were shut down until the wreck was cleared. And police shoot and kill a man who threatened a trucker worker with a knife. Again, this happened in California. They released new information on an officer-involved shooting incident that ended a knife attack at a business location. This happened around 7:30 in the evening on October 14th in Chico, California, when a suspect later identified as 30-year-old Stephen William Vest got into an altercation with a security guard after he threatened people with a knife. Police say Vest fled the scene and attacked people inside vehicles at the intersection of East 20th and MLK Junior Parkway before he moved on to a Petco store location. At the Petco, police say that Vest attempted to attack a truck driver who was unloading his trailer as well as a store worker, chasing them inside the store. What are people thinking these days? 3 officers with the police department arrived on the scene at the Petco, and they attempted to subdue him but were unsuccessful. 2 of the officers fired multiple rounds. He died at the scene after receiving attempts to save his life. Why? No other injuries were reported. 2 officers who fired on Vest have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation by the DA's office. Wow. And a new driveway service alerts truckers to speed traps, rollover risks, and more. A way station bypass service recently added a new feature that will provide drivers with alerts when they travel into an area deemed risky for truckers who are also following fleets to monitor driver behavior. While DriveWise is best known as a service that allows drivers to bypass way stations, the company's expanded their services over the years to include safety alerts and parking information. DriveWise Safety, which debuted October 14th, is an enhanced version of the existing DriveWise Safety notifications. The company says that DriveWise Safety Plus comes already embedded in partner ELD systems. The system provides drivers with general safety alerts customized to particular fleets, and allows trucking companies to monitor how driver reacts to those alerts. Drivers say they have already identified 2,500 high-risk areas that typically give trucker problems and are adding more sites each month. Quote, it's an entirely new way of thinking and managing drivers when it comes to safety. It can help prevent speeding infractions by warning a driver on an upcoming high infraction zone, provide an alert for an upcoming high rollover corner, even help with safety alerts down mountain passes. What's more, managers can easily create their own alerts for their own trouble zones. At the end of the day, DriveWise Safety Plus even lets your drivers know the number of parking spaces available at an upcoming rest area in select states. One of the most interesting features of DriveWise Safety Plus is the in-cab speed warning. The company says they've identified high citation areas and can alert speeding drivers to tap the brakes to avoid a ticket. The DriveWise Safety Plus program also gives trucking companies lots of data on driver behavior. You can drill down to see how a particular driver is reacting to the safety notifications, plus review the aggregate, seeing how your entire driver pool or fleet is complying. It can serve as a great proactive driver coaching platform, further supporting programs that are already in place. Yeah, no thanks. Don't need no damn computer to tell me how to drive after I've been out here 32 frickin' years. I'm sorry. But for the newbie drivers, it is good. Police make surprising discovery when investigating an abandoned truck. Police in Laredo, Texas uncovered a major human smuggling operation while investigating an unattended truck at a business location. This happened back October 15th. Laredo Police Department received a report about a suspicious vehicle parked behind a Burlington coat factory store on San Bernardino Avenue. Witnesses told police that they spotted two people being placed inside the truck's trailer. When officers arrived on scene, they found a truck with a motor running but no driver in sight. Officers reported hearing voices coming from inside the trailer. After noticing the trailer doors were ajar, officers opened them and discovered 63 illegal immigrants inside. After the immigrants were checked out by firefighters and determined to be okay, they were handed over to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Oh, they'll find out who was driving it. And four who settled for $4.7 million now indicted in New Orleans as semicrash scheme. Prosecutors have added four more indictments to the dozens already issued in a growing investigation into a massive fraud scheme involving stacked truck crashes in New Orleans. On October 16th, federal prosecutors in New Orleans indicted four individuals: Anthony Robinson, Audrey Harris, Jerry Schaefer, and Kashira Robinson on charges of mail fraud and conspiracy to commit mail fraud. Four people named in the October 16th indictment have been accused of intentionally causing a crash that resulted in a multi-million-dollar settlement against a trucking company. That crash occurred on October 13th, 2015, involving a CR England truck and a Michigan-based semi-truck driver. The alleged ringleader of the scheme admitted to staging at least 40 semi-truck crashes. Several lawyers currently named in court documents only as attorneys A, B, C, and D, and E have also been implicated in the scheme. A total of 32 people have now been indicted in connection with this federal probe into this one scheme. And in this story, a female truck driver allegedly fired for failing strength test gets settlement and apology. A female truck driver was awarded a cash settlement after she alleged that she faced retaliation from a trucking company based on her gender after failing a physical strength test. Hon, if you can't do the job, don't do the job. Go find something else. Minnesota-based trucking company Stan Koch & Sons Trucking has agreed to pay former employee Alana Nelson $165,000 and provide her with an apology for how she was treated by the company, according to an October 19th news release. Koch & Sons were sued by the EEOC on May 24th of 2019. According to court documents, Nelson was hired by the company in 2012 and was hurt on the job in April of 2013. She was placed on leave through Workmen's Compensation Program until July 2013, when she was fired shortly after failing a cost reductions technologies isokinetic strength test. The test measures muscular strength, range of motion, and physical endurance. I had to take one of those tests for a company that I work for. You have to push against it with your legs. I barely passed it. And I'm pretty doggone strong. I could lift 75, 100 pounds, and I barely passed that endurance test. Nelson was invited to reapply with the company. She later filed a complaint with the EEOC alleging that Koch & Sons discriminated against her based on gender through the strength test. Nelson reapplied in January 2014, then again in April of 2014, at which time she was reportedly told that she could not be hired at that time due to a pending legal matter, her EEOC complaint. In August of 2019, the EEOC filed a separate class action suit against Koch & Sons over the use of the CRT test, alleging that it disproportionately screens out women who are qualified for truck driver positions at Koch. Employers cannot use a test that disproportionately excludes women unless they have proof that the test is actually related to one's ability to do the job. The EEOC is committed to expanding women's access to traditionally male-dominated careers through the removal of unnecessary and discriminatory barriers to employment. In addition to the $165,000 payout and apology, the EEOC also ordered Koch and Sons to install more comprehensive anti-discrimination and anti-retaliation policy, train its corporate office employees on Title VII protections against discrimination and retaliation, and report to the EEOC all future complaints of Title VII discrimination and retaliation. Yeah, you can imagine all them men were snickering in their frickin' offices' bathrooms. And in this story, a driver is rescued from a mangled rig. And we're talking, you can't tell it was a truck. It's nothing but hunks of metal. Looks like it got crushed by a car crusher. A semi-truck driver was pulled from a mangled rig in New Jersey on October 18th. According to Elizabeth, New Jersey firefighters, off-duty captain was on his way to work when he responded to exit 13 on the New Jersey Turnpike for an overturned semi-truck. When he arrived, it became clear the truck driver was stuck inside the mangled cab, so he called for backup. An EMS truck and multiple tours of firefighters soon responded, extracting the driver from the rig. The truck driver was then transported to a nearby hospital, but their current condition remains unknown at the time of the writing of the article. And there was a snow squall in Iowa on Interstate 35. Officials reported several crashes on I-35 in Des Moines as the state was pounded by an early snow squall. This happened Monday morning, October 19th. It issued a snow squall warning for portions of central Iowa that remained in effect until shortly before 1 p.m. As many as 6 inches of snow was reported in parts of central Iowa, and local outlets reporting several crashes on I-35 and other interstates. Winter is coming, people. Are you prepared? And in this sad story, 13 horses die in a crash on a Missouri interstate. More than a dozen horses were killed or euthanized following a Sunday night crash in Missouri. This happened October 18th around 8:15 in the evening in Franklin County. Police say that a truck hauling a trailer loaded up with 29 horses crashed into the median, the westbound lanes of I-44, mile marker 251, coming to rest on its side. Truck driver wasn't seriously injured. Of the 29 horses in the trailer, 13 either died at the scene or were euthanized. The surviving horses were transported to the Humane Society's Long Meadow Ranch. The group Missouri Emergency Response Service Large Animal Rescue was on hand to assist with the rescue effort following the crash. 9 members worked determinedly in the rain, crap, and mud in a confined area with 1,000-pound animals that were confused, injured, and scared. No major injuries to the personnel occurred. According to them, the last time a similar incident occurred, all of the horses were saved from slaughter by adoption. They were unable to confirm that the horses were headed for slaughter. The cause of the crash remains under investigation. And feds make a big bong bust after a truck inspection. Earlier in the month, officers with the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol say that they discovered a large amount of drug paraphernalia at a New York border crossing. The incident occurred October 4th at Alexandria Bay, New York, when the interest of officers was piqued by a commercial vehicle with a load that said smoking glass ball water pipe. After an X-rays inspection, the officers took a close look at the load and discovered 8 pallets of glass smoking pipes and an unlawful importation of drug paraphernalia. Yeah, there's a lot of bongs here. Investigator also discovered that the shipment's country of origin contained marking errors and inaccuracies. A specialist examined the 2,412 glass pipes found on the truck and determined that all of them were drug paraphernalia. The shipment, $156,000 worth of glass pipes and bongs, were seized for import violations. There you go. And a man is caught on camera in this story dancing and striking vehicles on a Maryland interstate. God, have people lost their minds or what? Maryland State Police say that a man was hospitalized after caused a major traffic disturbance on a busy interstate. Yeah, I'm just going to jump out of my car and blast the radio and dance all over the place. Alrighty then. The incident occurred on October 16th on I-95 in Hartford County, Maryland. Viral video was shared on Facebook, of course. You could see that the man exited his vehicle, opened doors in the trunk, and danced in the active lanes of traffic. He's also spotted striking vehicles with his fist. Troopers said the man was taken to the hospital and that no charges have been filed. Yeah, he's Looney Tunes. Cops arrest a hallucinating commercial driver for multiple violations. Authorities in Georgia say they recently arrested a truck driver for several serious substance use violations. They got their violation of the week. It was discovered that he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. A cab inspection was conducted and multiple cans and bottles of alcohol were found along with a scale and a hypodermic needles. The driver was arrested and the case will proceed through the court system like it should. And last but not least, a truck is stuck on a mountain road and isn't going anywhere anytime soon. A box truck got stuck near the top of a treacherous mountain road in Colorado around the 16th of October. The rugged mountain road is known as Engineer Pass and is notorious for being one of the most tricky, treacherous, and steep backcountry roads in the area. The road has a peak elevation of 12,800 feet and requires four-wheel drive and a high-clearance vehicle. It is a part of an alpine loop which connects Silverton, Colorado to Ouray, Colorado, and goes all the way to Lake City through a series of rocky roads through the San Juan Mountains. Officials say the truck was near the top of the Engineer Pass following a GPS route heading towards Lake City when he tried to turn around, getting himself stuck near the top. How they got that far is beyond me, said the towing and recovery owner. They're going to need a lot of help, he said. It's in a predicament that's really going to cost them. Barger also says the driver had a temporary Colorado license plate and seemed very upset. A local photographer says he happened to be on that trail that day, which allowed him to capture the photo. Livingstone said that the truck isn't blocking the Jeep trail entirely, but that rig has made that particular area of the trail more dangerous to pass. The truck was scheduled for removal October 19th. It's not going to be easy. So I greatly appreciate each and every one of you who tune in to listen to me each week here on the cafe. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe using the link below, or on CloudHub, please subscribe at the top of the page. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. As I said, please, if you wouldn't mind, stop in if you're on Facebook and give us a like on Facebook. Also join our discussion group at Julia's Truckett Cafe Regulars. And if you wouldn't mind, subscribing to our newsletter at juliastruckettcafe.com/newsletter. So thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time. You have been listening to Julia's Truckett Cafe Truckin' News Hour. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Take care. Have a blessed day.